we have our How to DAO and how to set up a DAO. Young is going to be moderating for us. And we're going to pass the microphones to everyone.
All right, very good afternoon to everyone. Hope you all had a good break. So I'm Young, I'm currently studying at the London School of Economics. Previously was at Folius Ventures, a Web3 Asia-Pacific-based fund, and had a short stint at Multicoin on the investment committee. So today we have a panel about DAOs, and we have some very interesting and exciting people who have very experience in the space. I'll let them introduce themselves. Maybe Ruby, you could start, and we could go this way down.
Hello, my name is Ruby, and I'm a product manager at FWB, which is a DAO. We try to straddle the culture, tech aspect of Web3. So we try to provide tools for cultural builders and maintainers. And essentially, we've been doing this for about 3 years now, 2.5 years, and really focused on community and making events for people who are like-minded to get together and make cool stuff.
Hey, I'm George. I previously was at Commonwealth up until about 2 months ago. So Commonwealth is the DAO governance platform for DAOs like DYDX, Osmosis, 1inch, etc. And then I also am the overseer for the DYDX Ops Trust.
I'm Patrick, sorry. I'm with Orange DAO, which is a community of 1,300 plus YC founders that exist to support Orange Fund, which is an early stage, like a seed stage venture fund.
Hey guys, I'm Benjamin. I'm with My Finance. Our DAO is called ChiDAO. We're a stablecoin platform. Largest on Polygon and Phantom, but we're on 25 chains.
So we have varied backgrounds here, people involved in DAOs. So I do want to start off by asking, what exactly is a DAO to you folks? Maybe Benjamin, you can kick us off on that.
Oh man, I think there's many different ideas of what a DAO is, right? Some might think it's like a snapshot page with a token. Others might look at it like Ethereum or Bitcoin. Ethereum and Bitcoin are DAOs, very successful DAOs, right? I think what really binds them all together is this idea of decentralized decision-making and hopefully also distributed decision-making. And so I hope we can get into it a bit.
Any thoughts on that? George?
Yes. So I generally think a DAO is a group of people with shared mission and shared rules for decision making. And so that can be as simple as 4 friends in a group chat deciding what to eat for dinner. It can be Bitcoin, it can be anything in between.
Cool. So in terms of what the world would look like with DAOs coming left, right, center, do you think there are particular verticals or particular products or projects that exist better as DAOs, and where do you see the product market fit coming in? Ruby?
That's a great question. I think it touches on this idea of whether or not many things should be DAOs. It comes with a share bit of difficulties. Anyone who's run any type of organization knows that there's diminishing returns to the amount of people who are involved in decision making, democracy included, right? And essentially, there are specific groups of people who want to achieve things. For us at Friends with Benefits, it is, for instance, something like Fest, something like our brand new app, and we can actually corral a group of amazing creatives behind that project. Then we can actually achieve great things. But you need a specific vision, things you want to do, a roadmap, which can be difficult when you sort of just scale it out with no specific intent.
Right. Patrick, would you have any thoughts on this? I mean, Orange DAO, it's an incubator. It's also kind of you have a fun element to that as well, but you chose to kind of set yourself up as a DAO, or brand yourself as so. Why so?
Yeah, so sorry, I can't tell, my voice is really loud. It seems loud. Yeah, so technically Orange DAO is an investment DAO that exists to support Orange Fund, and I think, that is a world that works really well for a DAO because the way that we're structured, we have a large number of inbound investment opportunities, and there's a team that's incentivized with our native coin, Orange, to evaluate these, and it basically, that's the funnel, and then the team evaluates the opportunities, passes them along to a call, and evaluates them again, and then it goes up to the GPs, which are also members of the fund, but there are 3 GPs of the fund who are responsible for investment decisions. So, that model has allowed us to evaluate, 1,500 plus opportunities over the last year, and I tend to think, that kind of model works better than an individual doing this kind of thing because you start to run into all kinds of biases, that individual's bias, and time will tell, right? Like, we're a couple years into this project, but I think that aspect works really well. And then something special about Orange DAO, which I think is hard with a lot of other DAOs, is it's made up of a community of founders who tend to be really self-starters and just kind of, it allows for rapid iteration, and you have people, as Ruby was saying, pulling towards the North Star. But like, if you don't have that kind of group of people with that personality, the DAO can be much more complicated. And again, as he was saying, right, like direct democracy, the Greeks started it and it didn't work so well. The Romans evolved it, right? Like it's really hard to maintain engagement. And, I think we've been kind of lucky, but again, time will tell.
Interesting.
Actually, I would like to piggyback on that last comment you made about engagement, right? I think a lot of people really go wrong with DAOs in that they just try to recreate public companies. They're like, okay, we're going to have a DAO, which means a democracy, which means everybody with a token gets to vote, and they vote on whatever they think is better for them or for the company. And I think that's very bad because then we're just recreating TradFi, aren't we? We're not really making anything new. If we look at the best decentralized systems, even think about Skype, how their network works, or think about Ethereum, right? Where, people are technically voting on what to validate, on what information is correct, and they get rewarded for making, the right decisions, the decisions that are good for Ethereum as a whole. But then you go to DAOs, and it's like really susceptible to the same problems that public companies have, in that people will buy up the tokens and make decisions that serve themselves, often to extract value from the organization instead of trying to improve it. So I think we really have to look at incentives and how we incentivize the correct decision making. And in that side, I would say the only real DAOs right now would be like Ethereum and Bitcoin. I really wouldn't count all these like dApps as real DAOs. DAOs that have continued on like that innovation. They're more like public companies.
On that.
I would just like to perhaps beg a question to the audience or to yourselves as to what is the common denominator between public companies and DAOs. And I'm a cyber ethnographer. I study digital communities. That's what I did before being at Friends with Benefits. And so whether it be Facebook groups or just straight up group chats and how they interact. And there is a common denominator in why they behave in the ways that they do. And it's that they're run by humans who have these incentives and who tend to be sometimes self-serving. So sometimes not so much the structure as to the agents themselves.
Yeah, to chime in there, I think one of the benefits of DAOs is really being able to start decentralizing any single point of failure. And so a great example, and I'll push back on ETH and Bitcoin are the only DAOs. I'm a big fan of Frax. So for those of you not familiar with Frax is a decentralized fractional reserve stablecoin. And so the DAO gets to vote on pretty much how much money they want backing a single stable. And so it typically hovers somewhere around 85 cents. And so you're able to determine what is the best capital efficiency for this ecosystem based off of the risk perception of the people within the DAO. You don't have any single agent who's like, this is the law of the land, and you're able to really determine what's a system that's best for the people. I do think that, like, as we think about DAOs, like, what are DAOs good at and what are they not good at? DAOs aren't good at leadership. You need some sort of centralized entity that's determining, like, where you're going, and sort of like, okay, we're at point A, this is point B that we're going to. What DAOs are really good at is figuring out what's the most optimal way to get from A to B. And so I think with that, you know, DAOs as like products first need to find product market fit, sort of like how Gnosis pretty much built out a really robust product and then eventually was like, okay, community, here are the reins, like, you know what we're doing, figure out where to go from here. And so, you know, I think trying to limit where you have more centralized decision-making and where you have more decentralized decision-making is important.
Right. I really like the point you touched on having certain functions being better performed, harnessing the wisdom of crowds, and certain functions perhaps better performed by a delegated management team and things like that. So on that note, there is an issue regarding voter participation in DAOs today. It's like Dune and dashboards would show that less than 10% of voters have actually ever voted. What is your these community voter participation?
Something that we do that I think is pretty effective is a weekly town hall, and you know, it's a way, because you're right, like the biggest problem with a DAO is just non-engagement and fatigue, because essentially it's a volunteer organization. So how do you maintain these people? So, or maintain interest. So it's like, what we've tried to do is to create this vision, and everyone's kind of pulling towards that, but then you have, you know, we've done several, like, you know, IRL events, but there's a weekly town hall, and then there are a number of kind of subcommittees that are performing different things that have their own weekly cadence. So it just is increasing this level of involvement, and I think letting people feel like they're heard, you know, and lowering the barrier to entry. And something that we've tried to do also is introduce quadratic voting so that even someone who, you know, has been later and may not have as many tokens is able to have an outsized impact when we do proposals. You know, it's also kind of trying to limit the number of proposals. Proposals are big things, but then everything within that is delegated, so someone executes, you know, so we're not doing like a proposal every week, I think is also sort of helped. But, you know, quadratic voting has been great.
Well, I guess you also have to look at why people are voting, right? Because it's not like one person, one vote. It's not a democracy. It's like a company. And so Uniswap is a very good example because, you know, the people that hold the token are invested in that company, and they're going to do whatever is best for their interests and maybe for the rest of their portfolio. I mean, if you want to make a change in Uniswap, you have to ask A16Z, like, are you okay with this? If not, they're the biggest backholder. They're just going to go against it because maybe somewhere else in their portfolio, there's another company that could benefit from Uniswap not doing so well or maybe doing well. So, I mean, this idea of like engagement comes down to distribution. Are the votes distributed? Is the power distributed? If it's not, I mean, if I have one CRV, am I going to vote? No, I mean, there's no real reason for me to vote other than maybe the bribes that some of these companies have. I think maybe if we empower people more, we would see more engagement.
Show of hand here, if you're all over the age of 18, how many people have voted at the municipal level? Okay, not the effect that I was going for, but we do see, sort of generally speaking, in America, in the Western world, not such high participation in a lot of sort of local political issues. And when we build organizations with the intent of people participating, we must be aware that generally speaking, we are in a culture where people only really stand up, go wait in line and vote where it really, really matters to them. So, what does that mean? If you're building an organization, it must align profoundly with its members. Otherwise, you will have low participation. So when we're talking about organizations that are maybe purely financial or structural, and they have only a fractional impact on a person's net worth, then we can infer that they will not participate at the same level as you guys municipally when it's about the park where your kids go play, the schools where you want to go or whatever. So even DAO, no DAO, there's an issue of alignment that we need to take care of when building organizations at large.
Yeah, so I'll say I think like the reason we have bad voter turnout is sort of twofold. So first off, we have pretty bad user experience. So like when I first started at Commonwealth about 2 years ago, if you wanted to participate in a DAO vote, you had to use no less than 7 different separated platforms in order to track what was going on, understand the conversation, see the proposal itself, vote on the snapshot, vote on like the first initial poll, vote on the on-chain one. And so it's just like, you're not gonna get people to do that. And it's a really tough barrier, especially if you're trying to attract like new retail investors to come and participate. So that was one of the big first things that we really tried to solve at Commonwealth. And we saw like user engagement went up. From there, there's still continued problems where, especially for a lot of these proposals, people don't actually read anything until they go to the voter page. And so a big thing that I'm a really big fan of is in California, whenever it comes to election season, you get a booklet that has in like clear, non-biased language, like what does yes mean, what does no mean, and we need that for DAOs. Because if, you know, like say the Uniswap to deploy on BNB, you know, if I'm just an outsider and I don't really have the understanding of the nuance of, you know, Andreessen's portfolio bias, I just don't really have the information I need to make an informed decision. Sort of then the second fold is there's way too many votes. And so it's like, you know, again, you're just never going to convince people to be voting like 40 times per ecosystem they're in. You know, the average crypto investor probably has about like 5 to 10 communities that they're a part of. You're talking about like 200 votes, call it maybe 30 minutes per vote to be informed. Like, you're talking serious time commitments per year to like be a quote unquote like good citizen. You know, with that, I think that utilizing sub-DAO infrastructure is a much better approach to governance. And so you end up saying that we don't need people to vote on every single like little decision, but more so we want to do like board level decision making where the entire DAO will maybe make a large budget allocated to a variety of different subcommittees. And you do that, you know, maybe once a quarter, once every 6 months, something like that. So you can cut down the number of proposals that people have to vote on. You also have much more meaningful proposals, so people are more incentivized to be like, hey, this is a $20 million proposal, like I probably should read up and, you know, vote.
I really agree with you there. I think sub-DAOs and like subcommittees are a very smart way of organizing your DAO because people just don't know stuff. I mean, maybe they're interested in your protocol, so they buy a little bit because, you know, token go up, they make money. But like they might not understand the nuances, so it's very good. I mean, MakerDAO has their core units. I know DYDX has also subunits, synthetics. So definitely a really good model.
Yeah, that's actually what we've been doing. Again, sorry. Yeah, like I created a proposal to create a mentorship program and got budget, and then within that, I've executed the whole thing. You know, there hasn't been any subsequent votes. We just passed like a giant, you know, omnibus budget for season 2. But then again, within that, there are people delegated to lead these things. So it isn't, we've definitely tried to cut down on the number of votes. I think we're on, you know, proposal 70 or something in, I don't know, 15 months of operation. So it hasn't really been excessive.
A lot of good points touched on there. I think one, just empowering the individual voter to this aligning what matters to voters with what matters to the project. And that can be in the form of sub-DAOs, like what you said, and in the form of shared expertise amongst the people who are actually voting. With that sort of with that sort of frame in mind, a DAO needs to scale and it needs to manage many different small teams, and ultimately everyone still needs some sort of alignment in their overarching goals. How does a DAO maintain transparency and maintain accountable to its token holders in that sense?
Like with respect to like using a sub-DAO infrastructure or just in general?
I think in general, just ensuring that they're doing, perhaps everyone's going in the same direction, ensuring that like the DAO actually is going in the right direction in terms of what everyone is agreeing on.
Yeah, so I think utilizing like community town halls is important. I think we've seen a number of instances where all of a sudden the community kind of speaks up and says that they don't agree with the direction things are going, whether that's a quote unquote correct view or not. I think from there, if it's maybe the community is just like a little misaligned. So one example I'm thinking of is there's an entity called Reverie that does a lot of consulting for major DAOs. So they run the grants program for Osmosis and DYDX. The Osmosis community at one point pretty much said like, hey, why are we paying you guys a lot of money to run this program? Like, we can just do it ourselves. And the guys behind Reverie come from amazing backgrounds. They know pretty much everyone in the space. They do amazing work. And so they had to hop on like, I think it was like a 5-hour call going back and forth with the community, trying to like answer any question that popped up, explaining like, this is what we do, this is what you're paying us for, like, this is why you probably can't do it yourself, or like the problems you're gonna run into, yada yada. And it really does take just having those like public conversations to really answer anyone's like qualms. I think from there, the sort of next important thing is to understand like, what are you guys optimizing for? And so especially around the same time, Osmosis was also continuing to do not outrageous, but significant liquidity mining rewards. And so at a certain point, the community said like, hey, we're spending more money than we're making in fees. Like, why are we doing this? And fair point. But I think, it comes to that question then of like, okay, are we trying to acquire users when other programs aren't doing liquidity mining? And they were able to grow their monthly active users pretty significantly, but you do have the trade-off of like, you're running a deficit. And so, again, from there, you have to have those community calls to make sure that you guys are all aligned on like, this is what we're doing, this is what we're trying to optimize for. If you have any qualms, speak up now.
Gotcha, that's very helpful.
I would love to touch up on that as well, because there's different kinds of transparencies, right? There is obviously the strategic transparency, like getting people's input, and then there's also like, is my money okay? Is my money safe kind of transparency? And I think that second one is very important. And look at FTX, right? Look at Celsius, where we've had problems where people's trust was, exploited. That's what's more important to me. And I think having everything on chain and minimizing the amount of Web 2 stuff we have, so basically stuff that's not on the blockchain, is the way, because then everybody can see it's anything that happens to their money because it's on the blockchain, and you can have third parties come in and verify that information. Now, when it comes to strategy, I actually think it's not good to give too much of the strategy work to the community, especially as a founder, especially early on. If you have like 1,000 people making a decision, you're not gonna make a good decision. 2, you might not even make a decision at all, because people are just gonna be fighting all the time. A lot of people just like to troll, maybe people just don't understand the nuances. So if you wanna not have a lot of gray hairs and you're a founder, maybe try to set some guidelines at the beginning. Like, this is what the DAO is gonna make a decision on, and we can have the town halls about this, but this other stuff, maybe leave that for the team.
Yes, this is some of the work we did at FWB, which is survey throughout the entire community, build a framework for mission and values, which was then presented to the community as a vote. And in terms of being transparent, we do the regular things like presenting the budgets on a quarterly basis. Some of our transactions are still off-chain because of their nature. So we present the budget, how much is spent. And for the teams that are working on specific projects, like the product team, we have a public works channel where we present updates on, I'm the designer, I'm working on the wireframes, and just keeping people in the loop has been quite helpful in being like, okay, we're spending a lot of money on development, what's actually happening, who's working on what, and so those public work channels for different sort of verticals have been helpful in building that relationship and transparency with the community.
Gotcha. That's very helpful. We do have some time left. I'd love to open it up to the audience for some Q&A. So if anyone has questions. The gentleman over there.
So the first one that came to mind, you can argue whether it's a DAO or not, but is this entity called DAOstar. And so it's representatives from a variety of the major DAOs and DAO tooling entities, mainly focusing on like research and regulatory. And so they'll put together a variety of different standards for DAO operators, like, hey, this is like how you should run your governance. These are like different EIPs that you guys should consider adopting, et cetera, and just try and like help push the DAO space forward.
I mean, solidly, right? Solidly and the Solidly forks, for those that are not familiar with that, is basically a decentralized exchange where you have different people voting on where the incentives go. And oftentimes they get incentives from other protocols to make certain votes. We call them bribes. Probably shouldn't call them bribes, the SEC commissioners in the building. But in general, it's been very successful. And you often see that people collect like actual protocols, like our protocol collects a lot of Velo from Velodrome, which is a Solidly fork. I know Synthetics does it too on Curve. I mean, basically you talked about Frax. Frax won the Curve Wars. They control a lot of it, so it's a DAO of a DAO basically. But then I guess Convex owns Frax, so it's like a nice little circle of DAOs, and that's pretty successful. So yeah, it's a lot of examples of that being successful. And I would actually say it's better for other companies to own your company than for people to do that, because they make way better decisions.
Any examples of Web 2 companies in Web, like voting on Web 3 DAOs, other than funds, of course?
Yeah, so I mean, I guess you end up with entities like Gauntlet that will end up participating. So a lot of different like quant risk managers. Also
universities, like for example at Cheetah we have University of Pennsylvania as one of our delegates. I think we might be onboarding a Swiss university now. So yeah, I mean definitely open for that. Compound, Ave, they also take a lot of universities.
Cool. I think that gentleman there has a question.
Voting on reputation, like, could you expand on that?
I have one example, which is something we did being a community of individuals. This is a project I led, which is our code of conduct. So deciding what is allowed and what is not allowed within the community, I guess has reputational risk. So if you decide that, you know, this is 4chan, we can do whatever we want, that has a specific reputation. We took another approach closer to a lot of different open source projects as code of conducts, and that speaks to the things we believe in and the reputation we want to have in the ecosystem. Is that a good example?
Yeah, I think a lot of people vote on stuff that doesn't have to do with money. I mean, obviously a lot of DAOs try to stay away with, like in Web 2 you see a lot of companies taking political stances or, you know, making those kind of like statements. I mean, we stay completely away from that stuff. But I mean, we vote on like logistical stuff, like constitutional things. Huh?
How convenient.
Yeah, I mean, you don't want to get in trouble. I mean, we're such a diverse set of people. You know, it's already complicated to talk about money. Imagine bringing other subjects into it. But basically what I'm saying is, yeah, people vote on all sorts of things. I mean, should we partner with somebody else? I mean, what is the meaning of partnership when we say it as a marketing team? We voted on that. I mean, you vote on all sorts of things.
I mean, it's financial in nature, so, but I guess ultimately, we're an investment DAO, but we created a fellowship as well. So it's sort of a program to give $25,000 to an individual or, a team to just explore Web3 to, I guess similar to a Teal fellowship, but, the idea is to bring the next generation of builders into Web3. So we looked at it, yeah, there's money involved, but we really wanted to try to help people help solve the cold start problem where someone's like, I want to do something, I don't have the money, well, here's 25 grand, if something comes a bit great, if not, that's okay, but you've had time to explore this opportunity, and then, we try to help them afterwards, but yeah, I mean, I categorize that a little bit more as the public good.
I think all the students should talk to him after the ask for 25 grand.
Application's just closed, but we'll have another season next season, I guess, in 6 months.
Talk to the DAO. We have a question here.
Benjamin, question for you actually, because I agree on the fact that as a DAO you should be able to differentiate kind of certain aspects of decision making based on probably like skill set of certain people, obviously, these types of things. What would you say is like your approach specifically regarding like decision making in DAO, for example, like strategic or financial, even like you said, like logistically. How do you decide what decisions go past the vote and which ones don't? And how does the community approach that?
Yeah, and it's a very good question because we're not like Sushi or like MakerDAO where it's like direct vote for everything or like SubDAOs. We kind of have houses, kind of like class shares or kind of how Optimism has like the House of Citizens, the House of Token Holders, stuff like that. So we have the team, and the team is like the strategy like kind of like head that decides what direction we're going in. They can veto proposals, they can make kind of executive decisions because we're still a young project. We have people that invest their time, people that live in the Discord. I mean, we have a bot that follows how much activity you have in our forums, in our chats, stuff like that. And based on that, we can say, this person is a knowledgeable person about our protocol. They can make the proposals, they can propose things, they can post things, but they can't vote on them. And then you have the people that are invested with money, people that buy the token. And then they have the final say, like the final signature, this proposal should go through. But those people cannot come up with proposals. Because what we've seen with a lot of DAOs is that you buy up a bunch of the token and you make terrible decisions like, real world assets or stuff like that, in order to gate the project from bad strategic mistakes, we really segregated the decision making like that.
From Maker here.
We talk to them all the time. I'm not mentioning Maker. I'm just saying in general. I would never fund a project.
Okay. Well, if we don't have any more questions, I think this was a great. Thank you all for our panelists. Can you give them a warm round of applause?
Thank you, Young, and thank you to our wonderful speakers. We have our next panel starting soon. It will be Wallets 2.0, the next generation of wallets. Oh.